Hey everybody, it's Sergio with the Rideshare Guy. Welcome to another episode of Behind the Wheel. Well, today I have a very special guest. I actually wanted to do this for a while, but he spared about a half hour of his time for us. And here's Mr. Harry Campbell, the founder of the Rideshare Guy. Harry, welcome.
Sergio, good to have me on. Thanks. I'm excited to chat. Whose idea was this for this whole series behind the wheel? Was it yours or mine?
It was yours, yeah. and
Okay. All right. Well, I was going to take credit either way, but glad to hear
yeah, credit is due where credit is due.
it.
So let's talk a little bit about your past. I'm pretty sure you're a well-known figure in the rideshare industry, obviously, and how this all started. I'm sure a lot of people know about it, but for people who are going to watch this the first time, introduce yourself to our audience.
Sure. No, I think that's a good question since obviously, I think you're the face of the Rideshare Guy brand now, along with Chris on Show Me the Money Club and some of our other contributors like Jay and Joe and everyone else. So I think, but really kind of that's a good starting point because one of the reasons for that is that, I have been doing this a long time. I founded the Rideshare Guy about 10 years ago. So all the way back in 2014, I started driving for Uber and Lyft on the side. I was actually a full-time engineer for Boeing, kind of doing the opposite of what I do now, but that was my day job as a structural engineer. And I started driving for Uber and Lyft on the side. I started a blog, The Rideshare Guy, about my experience as a driver, a YouTube channel, my podcast, which I still run. I usually do one episode every week or two and publish the audio to my podcast and the videos to our YouTube channel. And yeah, that was kind of the beginning. Added Doordash, added other delivery services, but really kind of, I think we're best known for covering Uber and Lyft. And over the years have obviously grown the business to now we've got a number of great contributors such as yourself, actually doing the interviews. Still, I think best known and kind of have the most kind of credibility when it comes to Uber and Lyft. But, we also cover a lot of delivery topics. I mean, heck, our most popular video on YouTube is all about truck driving, right? John, who quit driving for Uber and Lyft and went and drove a truck. So that's got 6 or 7 million views. So anything that moves. But now I spend my time a lot more behind the scenes running the business, trying to find good people that we can work with, whether they're partners or whether they're contributors such as yourself, or people behind the scenes, and trying to make money so that from the business so that we can keep on generating lots of free content, support for drivers, and keep building the community. Because I think, as folks have probably noticed, I would say 99% of the content we do and sort of everything that we give and help with is free, right?
Yeah,
And so I think that's good and bad.
yeah, but
So we got to find
let me
ways
ask you
to.
this. Let me ask you this real quick. A lot of people quit their W-2s, or such as yourself, right? I mean, you were an
Yeah,
aerospace engineer with a steady job, healthcare benefits, this and that, right? And you said enough is enough at some point, I guess. And then you started this blog 10 years ago, and obviously it took a lot of courage to do that. I mean, and a lot of people are doing that today, right? So they're quitting their W-2s and they're moving to independent contractor work, such as gig work. What made you do that? Like, were you were you sick of crunching numbers or stuff, or what? I
yeah,
mean, because it's such a a
yeah,
jump, right? I mean, you took a jump on the
yeah,
way deep end of the pool, quitting a steady job with benefits to this. So what made you do that?
yeah. Well, I think I've always been good at math and sort of interested in science. And I think honestly, just day one of college, I picked that engineering degree. And because it was sort of something that I was good at. I definitely wasn't, my lifelong passion. I just sort of, it was kind of funny. I almost just picked aerospace engineering as my major because I liked math and science and went with that. And, my day job at Boeing, I liked it. It honestly wasn't that tough. But I think the biggest disconnect that I've always had with a more traditional job and W-2 jobs is that I would say most of the time, you're not rewarded for effort, right? You're kind of expected to work 40 hours, you're expected to work 50 hours a week, and then your pay is usually pretty in line with what you're doing, right? If I'm someone who, can do 10 times the amount of work as someone else, I kind of want to be paid comparably, right? And so I think that's kind of what I've always appreciated about working for yourself in the gig economy right now. So for example, if you're going to go out and drive for Uber and Lyft, you're probably, if you're a 10 times better driver than someone else, you're not going to be able to make 10 times as much, but I think you can make 50% more for sure. You can make maybe even double, right? Maybe you can even make 3 times, right? There is that sort of kind of parallel compensation to your skill, to your effort, right? And then even if you're a shitty driver and you just drive 100 hours, you're going to make a lot of money. So I think that's kind of cool, right? Yeah. That you kind of have all these various thresholds. And so for me, I kind of went the route of starting my online media business, right? And that's where I think you can kind of have that ultimate scale, right? Like we can do one video and work really hard on it. And there was a lot that went into that one trucking video, for example, and we can go into it if you would like, but that reached 5, 6, 7 million people. And that creates a lot of opportunities. That same video could have reached 5,000, right? So you literally can make 1,000 times more on a video that reaches 5 million people than 5,000. So that's sort of what I've always enjoyed about, there's like W-2 gig economy. And then I think, kind of running your own real business that you can sort of leverage, take advantage of that leverage.
Yeah. Once you did that switch, obviously initial days of it probably was you're a one-man crew, right? I mean, you're doing the writing, you're doing the videos, you're doing everything. And, it takes a lot of courage not only to do that, but a lot of your time, obviously. You committed fully. Because what I'm trying to say is that a lot of drivers that I talk to, they're not committed, right? They just want things handed to them somehow. No, I mean, whatever you put into it is what you're going to get out of it. This is no magic formula, but obviously skills and a little bit of thought process helps. But, now you're a blogger from an aerospace engineer. Now you're fully writing articles probably every other day or whatever you did, because I wasn't with RSG those days. But then, you obviously hit it.
I think you were just talking shit in the comments, but yeah.
Yeah, you were entering my comments. Yeah. But what it was is that, you fully committed, you're doing it full time. And now, you're in the gig economy. I mean, and you've seen it all, right? Because you were early, your foresight was perfect. I mean, you go, okay, this is going to be big. It takes.
Well, I don't know that it was perfect. I think it was probably more luck than anything, right? It was more, hey, I had taken a few Ubers and Lyfts. I had actually started a bunch of websites in the past, I kind of always been side hustling, right? I had started 3 personal finance blogs over the past, before I ever started the Rideshare Guy. So in the 5 to 7 years before, I had started 3 websites. I had done freelance travel writing. I had really been into kind of credit card miles and points. So I sort of had all these little hobbies, but all of my hobbies kind of revolved around making money. I like to travel. And then so I did travel writing about my trips and, got paid for that, right? Maybe didn't offset the whole kind of trip, but that was kind of my mindset. So when Uber and Lyft popped along, I'm taking rides as a passenger and I start talking to some of the drivers. Hey, how much are you earning? I remember in Orange County when Lyft launched, they were trying to seed the market and they were literally paying drivers $20 to $24 an hour just to sit there. No ride requirements. This was kind of very early before the companies got savvy. And I'm thinking to myself, this guy's watching Netflix, you're getting paid to watch Netflix, right? So I guess I've always liked those opportunities where I can kind of do something I'm already doing or something I'm interested in, make some money or a lot of money, right? And that's what was funny is that I was an aerospace engineer, but I was driving for Uber and Lyft on the side. And the kind of funny part early on, I was only driving Friday, Saturday nights. I was doing holidays, all the strategies that are kind of the most profitable that you talk with your audience a lot about. And I was making 50, 60 bucks an hour, which was more than my hourly rate as an engineer for Boeing. So kind of interesting.
But those days obviously are gone. However,
Well, I think they come and go. They might be temporarily gone, but I mean, I remember we were posting screenshots from you just a year or two ago during the pandemic when driver supply was low, where you were earning $50, $60, $80 an hour, right? And that's very strategic driving, take advantage of bonuses, incentives, being in a bigger market like Los Angeles. So I think to me, it's more about, I've been doing this for 10 years, right? So I've seen a lot of ups and downs and, someone just tweeted me, it's like, hey, this is the worst time ever to be an Uber driver. And, they're probably looking at it from this like 1 to 2 year window. Like maybe if you started at the peak of COVID when driver earnings were the highest and you drove till now, earnings have come down, right? Yeah. So I think kind of taking a step back is important.
In general, though, I mean, earnings are down because, they're trying to create scale and they have to, do all these trips, these companies. But let's talk a little bit about that. Let's talk a little about, sure. Not only your transition from the W-2 to independent contractorship, let's say, But the evolution of rideshare or the gig economy in general, obviously the pandemic helped quite a bit, right? We all know that. And without the pandemic, I don't think DoorDash would be around as the size as they are. And today there is an app for everything. You push a button, something will show up. Either a car will show up, food will show up, groceries will show up, right? And the fact that the gig economy is not going anywhere, right? And however, as a driver's advocate, I see certain things right with it. I see certain things wrong with it. But the next, let's talk a little bit about the evolution or the transition that you've seen from, within these companies. Let's say Uber, let's talk about Uber in general.
Sure.
The management obviously changed, and the pay scales have changed, and the new bells and whistles they introduce constantly in the apps. Why do you think, this first of all took hold, right? I mean, they have as of last quarter, they have 142 million monthly active paying customers. And from the first day to now, it's this amazing growth, the scalability of this business. Why do you think this resonated with the consumer so much?
Yeah, I mean, I think Dara just mentioned in a podcast that they do 1 million trips per hour. And I sort of joked, but it's not really a joke, like one incident could happen every hour, right? Like could be something bad, could be something, whatever the incident in your mind, right? And that's literally 1 in a million chance, right? So I think when you kind of step back and you think, wow, these companies are huge. And it's really, Uber, and I do put DoorDash kind of in that same kind of mega category. And you're right, the pandemic really accelerated. Like there wasn't the same buzz, the same kind of level of interest from drivers and customers before the pandemic when it came to DoorDash. And now, Uber's huge and DoorDash is huge in food delivery. So I think those are kind of the two big behemoths. And it's specifically to Uber. I mean, I think that really there aren't a lot of great alternatives to Uber, right? People talk about taxis or driving yourself, but if you think about when is Uber the busiest? Friday, Saturday nights, airport trips, Monday through Friday commuting hours, right? Let's look at Friday, Saturday night. You're out at the bar and you need to get home. You have a 3-mile trip. You're not walking. It's $200 surge price. What are you going to do? You literally have no other options to get home, right? So what would you pay for that? Normally it's a $50 trip. What would you pay? Would you pay 100? Would you pay 200? Would you pay 300? And obviously that's not going to happen every time, right? But I think when you think about like, what are the alternatives, right? Calling a friend to take you to the airport. I got picked up from LAX the other night and it literally took 30 minutes for the driver to get from just outside the airport grounds into the terminal. I'm talking going about a quarter, maybe a half a mile, right? I'm sure a lot of LAX drivers are familiar with this, maybe those Sunday, Monday night pickups, right? That can be a big hassle. Although now at least the UberX drivers don't have to go into the horseshoe anymore. So I think because there aren't many alternatives, that's allowed Uber to grow. It's a great product. It's a great service. You get picked up, you get dropped off, you pay with credit card, you can rate your drivers. And it's obviously a global company too. And so I think that's really, kind of why they've gotten so big and, why they've continued to grow and why they're charging passengers more and, why all their numbers are up and, they've now had 2 quarters where they've actually turned a profit. I think they made $200 million last quarter. So they're actually finally making money.
Yeah. And, let's ourselves transition a little bit now because look, we're a rideshare channel. It's called the Rideshare Guy. So
True.
I would say probably a majority of our viewers are rideshare drivers, right? I mean, I would bet probably it's 80% or more, but we're trying to pivot more to the delivery side or last mile delivery. Let's talk a little bit about the driver, right? I mean, as you know, I drive, quite often, or I drive when they show me the money. I mean, that's the only way I can be really profitable these days, but I do my share of driving. So, as far as drivers are concerned, I'm just going to come out and ask you this straight up. Do you think driver expectations are too high of what they should make per hour?
No, I don't. I mean, I think that everyone, regardless of their job, it's human nature to want to earn more, right? To want more, right? Like it's all about perspective, right? If you're living in Africa and you're living on $10 a day and you suddenly get $20 a day, you're going to be, wow, I'm very happy, right? So it's all about, kind of perspective, right? So if you're kind of here in America, living, here, working here, I think it's totally fine to, sort of always want more, to earn more. And, no secret either that a lot of large corporations try to pay their workers as little as possible, right? So there's kind of always that inherent tension. Uber is obviously no different, right? If they can pay you $10 an hour to do the job instead of 20, why the hell would they ever pay you 20, right? Like, I think anyone who thinks that is like, why isn't Uber paying me more? It's because they don't have to, right? Or they don't want to, right? And so I think as long as you go into it with realistic expectations, I think you can have a lot of success. And so I think, to me, it's more about, drivers are out there. And, I think what I've always has struck me, and this was especially early on, when I started interviewing drivers in 2014, 15, 16, 17, a lot of folks were older. They had been laid off. And some of the stories, I remember a guy, Rob, I believe his name was Robert. I had him on my podcast from Long Beach. And I remember the story he told me was pretty, I think, like, very powerful, right? He literally he was experienced, he could not get a job in traditional employment. Uber was the only one that would hire him. And he started working. It worked around his schedule, his wife, and all the kind of benefits that drivers are used to. But think about those benefits that are nice for him are also very appealing to everyone else, right? So it's like, because there's that low barrier to entry, a lot of people want to do it, right? Uber added 1.5 million drivers over the past year. They show you the destination. You can cash out instantly. Like, it's a pretty damn good job. If we ignore the actual hourly pay for a second, right? Like, the actual job, I mean, I think if a lot of people want to do something and there's a low or no barrier to entry, then yeah, you're going to have a lot of competition. So I guess, to me, it's more about, once you understand that and like the position that you're in, that's when you can kind of start to, leverage it and understand, like, what does Uber value in a driver, and how can I stand out, or how can I, like you said, I'm only going to drive when they show me the money, for example.
Yeah, I mean, I think what they do. I do understand the frustration in the driver community, because I get 1,000 emails a week, but for what the job is, I think the pay is decent, right? And again, all markets are different. We know that some markets are horrible, some markets are better. But to me, the fact that you just said it, 1.5 million new drivers.
I mean, I would push back. I would say the pay is good. I mean, there's 6.5 million people doing it. If they could find something better, why wouldn't they? Right? Like, literally, the data.
I agree with you. No, on that one, I'm agreeing with you. It's just that,
I mean, obviously, I think
nobody's putting a gun to anybody's head to do this. You know what I mean? Nobody's forcing you.
I mean, if you want to go work at McDonald's 40 hours, like, I would 100% of the time, I would rather drive for Uber 40 hours a week than work at McDonald's 40 hours a week. Even if the pay, after expenses on Uber driving was the same. Like, you can work 80 hours one week at McDonald's, on Uber, and then 0 the next, right? You can't do that on McDonald's. You kind of, anyone who's worked, more traditional W-2, very, very rigid, kind of dealing with a lot of crap. Like, I don't know. I think that, like, when you look at the alternatives out there, driving and being in the gig economy, just as sort of like a normal driver, not even counting the fact that, hey, if you really know what you're doing, if you're doing all of our strategies and all our tactics, you should be above average for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. But again, people's expectations are, I think, a little too high. And I think they're comparing themselves to maybe, I don't know, maybe like a UPS driver who just signed, a huge contract making $50 an hour. I'm like, maybe you're not that. I don't know. But that's besides the point. So you just said it, right? Uber just added 1.5 million new drivers to their existing base of 5 million already in a single quarter.
Yeah.
One single quarter. I mean, I'd never.
Was it 1 quarter or 1 year?
1 quarter. 1 quarter. Last quarter was 5 million
drivers.
Yeah, 5 million was last quarter. This quarter is 6.5. Now, I'm believing the company's numbers. Wow. I'm just taking their face value. Why do you think that happened?
Seems like a lot, to be honest, but
I agree, but it is what it is. But even if it's over a year, but
let's say 5 to 6.5. Either way,
why do you think that happened? First of all, do you think it's the macro economy? Do you think? I mean, it can't be that people are dying to drive for Uber, right? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's dying to drive for Uber, but obviously everybody knows the brand name Uber, right? So if you're on Indeed or you're on LinkedIn or you need a job and you see, go drive for Uber, immediately you know what Uber is, right? So there isn't that sale that the company has to make, right? Like, if it's like, go drive for Sergio's rideshare company, who the hell is Sergio? What's this company? Are they legit? Are they a scam? I see a picture of you. I don't know. Am I going to drive for this guy or not, right? With Uber, all they have to do is convince you, do you want to drive? Do you not want to drive? Right? Do you want to come work with us and you will make money instantly? You may not make as much as you want, but you will make money from the second you take your first trip, right? You will make a positive earnings. There's no training, right? So it's like the good and bad, right? So, I mean, I think the reason, they've got that going for them. And then, yeah, definitely, I think sort of I'm no expert on the economy, but it does seem like macro, there are a lot more people who are needing money, right? And or getting late, there've been a bunch of layoffs, right? And so again, right, like Uber is a great job if you've been laid off, or let's say you think that you're going to get a job in a few months, right? Like do this in the meantime. And so I think that there are a lot of people in America, and even though Uber's only 5-6 million, well, probably even less than I think that's global, but let's say 2-3 million drivers in the US. There's 300-400 million people in the US. So I think there's a lot of potential people that can work for Uber.
Right. And, we talk about oversaturation, obviously, right? It's a common word in our community. Oh, it's so many drivers. I'm like, okay, if they added 1.5 million drivers globally, and let's go with the same percentage in the US, they added 30% more drivers within the last year or quarter. Look, the pie is about the same. Obviously, their trips are growing. By the way, they did 2.44 billion trips in one quarter, over 1 million trips an hour. I'm like, wow. I always say, at that scale, I really wonder that the shit works as well as it does. Really, seriously. And then, I get all these emails with Serge, they didn't pay me here, they didn't pay me there. I'm like, look, man, they just did like 2.4 billion trips. That's a lot. But
or maybe I would say that because they're doing 1 million trips because they're doing 1 million trips per hour, they should have it pretty dialed in. I don't know.
We had that little Twitter thing a couple of days ago, and to me, it seems like there sure are a lot of glitches for a tech company that they are, but that's a different subject. But so, what do you think is going to happen? I mean, they added 30% more. Do you think driver earnings are going to trend a little bit lower because of oversaturation? Because they said it, supply actually may be outstripping demand now, which I'm going like, wow, that's a bad word for the driver.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think, like you mentioned earlier, it definitely depends on the market that you're driving in, even the time of year, we're coming up on Thanksgiving and New Year's, and this is the busiest time of the year. But as we all know, January to April is the winter slowdown. That's when demand drops off, right? So if I'm a driver and I'm thinking about that, like, hey, if I need money, I better bust my ass these next 3 months because I'm not going to be able to make as much the 4 months after, right? Like, I think a lot of drivers, like, this isn't, an eye-opening insight, right? Like, I do think that, like, a lot of people will sort of wait till January, February, March, April, and like, oh my God, I can't make any money right now. Uber sucks. I'm like, well, maybe you should have prepared a little bit, a little bit more, right? And that's sort of where, I kind of, I think you and the team does a really good job of educating people around these strategies and these seasonals. So I think to answer your question directly, what was it? What is going to happen to drivers' earnings now? Yeah. I mean, I think it's pretty simple. I think driver earnings are going to go down, right? I think that they have kind of been, steadily going down. And then, so it's sort of like if we go back maybe a year or two into COVID recovery, the companies were having to offer a lot of weekly incentives to get people back on the platform, to get them driving. And driver pay was sort of maybe at an all-time high. As supply has come back and there's more drivers on the road, now we're hearing more about oversaturation, too many damn drivers on the road. I think it's pretty clear that, hey, if you're Uber, okay, why am I going to offer these weekly incentives in the big markets? Let's pull back on those. Okay, hey, now we do this flat rate surge pricing. Customers, what did I say? Customers don't have a lot of alternatives, right? So like, let's charge them as much as we can within reason. For that $20 trip, let's charge 30, let's charge 40, see if they still take it, and they do. And then, hey, instead of paying the driver, a lot of that surge, let's pay them $15 and see if the drivers will take it. I mean, there's sort of, obviously now Uber shows drivers the upfront fare that you're going to receive. So it's kind of this whole argument, right, that has always happened over the years. Like, hey, is this fair? Like, Uber is telling you how much you're going to get. You're not getting much of the fare, but they are telling you how much you're going to get, right? And if we're all adults, if driver's willing to accept that, I'm not saying, it sucks if Uber's taking 70% of the fare, and then we know that's a number one complaint. And I agree, to finish a trip and then see that Uber took 70% is not a good feeling. It feels like shit, but they're telling telling you how much you're going to earn, right? So like I think like any driver who doesn't understand why Uber is doing that, I think kind of has their head in the sand. Like obviously they're going to charge the passengers as much as they can, pay drivers as little. It's on you to know like this is a good trip, this is a bad trip, this is not something that you should take or that you should take, right? And so I think that like when you kind of combine those factors, yeah, driver pay is probably going to go down a little bit because of the oversupply and all of that.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to start actually. I don't know if you watched yesterday or not, but as of next week, we're going to start cherry picking school 101. I want everybody to understand. I want everybody to understand how we do this. There's a method to that madness, but we have a few more minutes left. So, you transitioned from a W-2 to independent. You created a media empire. Okay, RSG is a media empire. So people don't be fooled. We're huge, but now. I want you to tell.
Yeah, we did over 1 million views on YouTube last month, so doing all right.
We're doing good. I want you to tell our audience 5 good things about the economy and 5 bad things. If you can come up with 5, okay, we'll go with 3.
5 good things. All right. Well, man, you're really going for it. All right. Number 1,
that's why I get the big bucks.
Yeah. Okay. Number 1, I think the pay. So I think that, the number one reason why everyone is working in the gig economy is the pay. And, you can obviously, everyone always wants to earn more, but I mean, I think the numbers sort of show itself like, hey, if you could make more money doing something else, I think most people would. And so, for this level of, work and kind of low barrier to entry, I think the pay is good. I think number 2, flexibility. These are kind of the obvious ones. Like everyone does it for pay. Everyone does it for flexibility. And so I won't like beat the dead horse. I think most people understand how flexible it is. You can instant pay, you can work whenever, as little or as much as you want. And then I think the other 3 that I like, number 3, kind of personal to me, it's great practice for running your own business, right? If you're out there driving for Uber, you've got one person kind of basically sending you customers. That's not a great thing. In business, you want to diversify your customer base, right? You want Uber, you want Lyft. What if there's a pandemic that affects rideshare? You want some delivery, right? And you kind of want to be signed up for those delivery services in case you need them, right? So it's like kind of preparing ahead of time and, all the other aspects that go into running a business. So I think that's 3. You want me to keep going?
Oh, no, 3 is good. 3 is good. 3 is good. Not come up with 3.
3 is good.
Not come up with 3 bad. Well, I can come up with 3 bad always, but I want you to come up with 3.
Yeah. So 3 bad things. I think that the companies really look at drivers like numbers on a spreadsheet, right? They don't look at the driver who's got 20,000 trips, 5-star rating, really has, big fat follower of Show Me the Money Club and spends a lot, like really cares about his or her craft, wants to be the best driver, wants to be a top driver. Deactivation report comes in, false deactivation, see ya, right? Like, no reward for safe driving, no reward for better driving, no swag, nothing. It's like, I think it's like a little bit dehumanizing, right? I think the way that the companies look at some of the best people in the organization. And then I think number 2 negative would be the pay. I mean, I do think that, I sort of looked at it as a positive, but I also look at it as a negative because the companies are really kind of trying to pay drivers as little as possible. And I think that kind of sentiment, like, I guess to me, what I would like to see is some stratification, right? Like, hey, we want to pay new drivers less, or we want to pay our worst drivers less. But hey, if you're a good driver, we're going to reward you. If you're one of the best, if you're one of the safest, if you're one of the highest rated, we're going to give you this. We're going to really reward the people who are kind of putting in effort financially, because that does not happen. And I think that sucks. Like in a normal organization, you would reward your best employees. You would pay them more. You would give them better benefits, better titles, better promotions, right? All of that stuff. And Uber doesn't, and Lyft and all the other companies don't do that. Number 3, I would say maybe safety. I think that safety is a big issue for both rideshare and delivery drivers. Taxi driving has always been in the top 10 most dangerous jobs, right? That's a little different. There's cash involved. There's no app, right? So Uber solves some of those potential safety issues because rides are tracked, but we all know that, you can get on with a fake name, fake that. And, I'm 6'3", 200 pounds, and I've been driving, I've driven in Los Angeles, and I pulled up to some areas where I was like, dang, this looks shady, right? So I think sort of that feeling especially with rideshare, like there's a lot of cool, positives about it, but some of the negatives, like just kind of feeling unsafe, going to strangers. And I guess that's one of the reasons why I like delivery. It's like you never even have to look at the customer,
Yeah.
just pick up, drop off, and call it a day. Hopefully, no dogs or
Yeah.
angry customers on the front porch.
The food doesn't talk back to you. They don't ask for the aux cord. They don't throw up in your car. It's pretty
Yeah.
good. I got
I
into
mean,
food late, but it's
that's one of the reasons why I like delivery, because it's dummy proof, right? You literally
yeah,
go to the restaurant and pick it up and drop it off, right? Listen to a podcast, listen to the Rideshare Guy, Show Me the Money Club podcast for 6 hours, go educate yourself, right? And those are sort of like, to me, I want like people, it's tough when it's like your job and this is what you do. But I really think like if you're going to do gig economy, you got to take advantage of the positives. Like if you're doing food delivery, listen to one podcast a day, 1 hour of Spanish, 1 hour, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't have to be full 8 hours. You can go on Facebook for 3 hours a day, but with the other 5 hours, do something
yeah.
productive, something useful, something that you're interested in, right? Because at a normal job, you can't do that. So I think it's really about taking advantage of the benefits of the gig economy. One of the things I always like driving in Los Angeles, I grew up here and live here, but I found new parts of town. I found new restaurants. I found cool new places, right? Things like that. And, it's kind of easy to overlook some of that at times.
Yeah. Well, here is from the OG Mr. Beast of of the gig economy right here. And I want to thank you for doing this with me. I know you're a busy man. And but this probably is going to be one of our more popular episodes because people know me, people know you.
We'll see.
And I'm taking you up on that crossfire thing, by the way. So we're gonna have to talk about that. But
all right, yeah, we've got a couple ideas for a new show.
yeah, we have a couple. We have actually a lot of ideas coming up. But I want to thank you for doing this. I appreciate it. The gig economy is here to stay, and there are good parts, there are bad parts, but your attitude matters. What's important, really. You have to do this with a good attitude. You can't just go be negative Nelly out there and expect good things to happen to you. So, anything else?
Yeah,
1 minute.
no, I think that's a good. No, I think that's a good takeaway. And I mean, I enjoy the behind the wheel series you're doing, where you're doing a really good job of profiling different drivers from different markets with different strategies. And I think that's kind of like highlights like everyone is different. That's sort of why. Whenever people say like, "Oh, this ride sucks," or this trip, you know what I mean? It's like everyone is different, right? Trip radar, $200 or $100 to go 200 miles. What if Uber is doing 1 million trips an hour? You don't think there's one person in the world who might want to take that trip? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, there's so many differing perspectives, and so I think it's cool that you've been sharing those. And I think like to me, there's always when it comes to Uber, there's sort of I don't think there's many like. In the old days, there was like 5-10% of people who were like Uber lovers, drinking the Kool-Aid. I don't know if there's too many of those people anymore. I think there's always the Uber haters and the Lyft haters. Like, I think those people are a little bit unreachable where, anything the company does, there's absolutely no positive or redeeming qualities of Uber and Lyft and gig economy. I don't agree with that. I think that there are plenty of issues, but I do pretty strongly believe there are more positives than negatives. And, of course, from like a business perspective, it's definitely in my interest to run a business where, hey, people want to do this job. You can earn money. I think you guys aren't shy or don't hesitate to call out the negatives, right? Because it's fun to bitch about, all the things that suck about the job. But at the end of the day, to me, it's like, hey, there's 6.5 million people doing it. I'm pretty sure they all want to make more money doing it, have a better experience, have more power, have more community, whatever it might be. So I think that's the kind of mission that we'll continue on. So appreciate your help and all of our audience too.
Absolutely, yeah. Inform, educate, and entertain. We did all three just now. So, and thank you so much for doing this. We'll see you soon.
All right.